Right, I will say hello to everybody who is here with us at 2:30 and everybody who's going to be coming to us in the middle of the night when your child has woken you up, or during the weekend when you might have 5 minutes, possibly in the loo, to yourself. But welcome back to our members. I'm so pleased to introduce Richard from All Aboard Club, that I think some of you, well, we know about Richard through some of our members in Woking. Hello, Richard.
Hi, thank you for coming on us, and it's great to be spreading the word now that All Aboard Club is well and truly operating in Surrey. Yeah,
so I thought maybe actually the first thing is to ask you, I suppose, who you are, where All Aboard Club came from, and what it is.
As terms of who am I, I'm a late diagnosed autistic ADHD adult. I got an autism diagnosis about 5 years ago, which made me realize that corporate life really wasn't for me and maybe I should look at something else. And through various involvements with the autism SEN support community, the idea of All Aboard Club came around, largely from a little local support group called Engine Shed in Reading, who are train based on the interests of their kids, and with their permission I sort of borrowed the idea and took it on the road and made it bigger. And over the 3-4 years we've been running, we've had 400 or 500 families come to our events, which have been not only our own sessions, but working for autism support groups. We've worked at the Science Museum, the Bluebell Railway down in Sussex. So we do a mixture. We run our own sessions where people can sort of pick and choose where they want to come and which dates they want to come. But we also work with other sort of transport, railway related venues to run sort of autism friendly events, just allowing them to sort of be obviously to be sort of inclusive and welcome a wider community, and from our point of view to give them a bit of training and awareness as to what subtle changes they can make or we can add to really make it a good day for everyone.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I suppose so. Our members who see me every week, I think, have a fairly good idea that I tend to go wherever my head takes me in these conversations. I'm really privileged to be able to speak to people like yourselves all over the place. One of the things that I suppose, well, maybe first of all, can you explain to us or show us what one of these sessions looks like?
Yeah, they're quite difficult to describe in a way. I've got a little video which will hopefully work of one of our recent sessions. There's no sound.
Look at that.
There's no sound on it for now, so just so that you can hear me over it. This is at the London Museum of Water and Steam in Brentford, where we've been running sessions. Our sessions basically go against a lot of the stereotypes that people have of autistic children being able to play together, empathy, you name it. We have 25 autistic children aged 4 to 14 or older, all coming independently, which can be a bit of a challenge if they've obviously never done this sort of activity before or never been to the venue. And yet there they are, just piling in. A quarter, a third of these guys have never been, that you're seeing in the video, have never been to one of our events before. Even the regulars won't come every session. So the children we have are a sort of new bunch of people, and they are, we basically build them a little version of this to get going. We've got plenty, and they just then we give the floor to them literally, and we get a lovely mixture. We get guys who are sort of little engineers in the making. Across on the left hand side and down the bottom left hand corner, that was created by a couple of the guys who just decided they needed to make it a bit bigger. We have those who find their favorite train and stick with it. We get those who want to sort their entire box of trains. We get those who want to make the longest train possible or flit around between different ones. The whole thing that it sort of works is that nobody minds a thing about how people play, and nobody has any expectations about how they might interact with each other. So we get the full autistic spectrum. I've had quite a few autism professionals come along and go, actually, yeah, this is actually useful for me to see, to see the spectrum in a room. And also parents maybe who've had children who've been recently diagnosed, who say, now I better understand where my son, my daughter is in the bigger picture, and how autism can be, or ADHD can be, not misunderstood, but the breadth of it can be better understood. So if their situation at school isn't being properly understood, it's possibly because that the school or other people have just got a different experience or knowledge of it. We get every possible flavour, as I say. Kids charging around, hands flapping, you name it. We know that's a good one, you know, a sign of people enjoying themselves. And we have to peel them off at the end of the session. We get them to pack up, which helps. So they sort of know it's sort of finishing gently, which they're actually very good at doing, despite not being so good at home. Then we go off to the next place. We've been all over the place, say different venues, anywhere with a big open space, which we can take over for sort of 2-3 hours. We've run these sort of events.
That looks amazing. So can I ask, in the picture that we're watching, are the adults volunteers? Are they parents? What?
The vast majority of the parents are parents. The parents stay. It just makes everything a lot easier, but we find most of them are enjoy the time off almost. We're quite sort of hands off as far as the activity is concerned, but if there is any little awkwardness is happening, whether like any bunch of kids will do, fighting over their favorite train, trying to get down the same bit of track, we're pretty direct with the kids in a nice way, because it just works best with them. If somebody's being outrageous, we'll sort it out, or equally we'll just find a way around it. So the parents find that they're sort of they're not left out of it, but they're there in case of emergencies, or they could, particularly with somebody who's new, they can sort of ease them in. In that picture there are, I was having a quick look around, there are 2 or 3 of our volunteers who are a mixture of people who have personal experience. They worked in childcare, or they're autistic ADHD themselves. We find, I mean, me being the classic case is that if you are autistic ADHD neurodiverse in some way, it is easier to get what we're about and know what does need to be done and what doesn't need to be done, just to keep this sort of a session ticking over. So we're always keen to have an extra pair of hands, because we're running more sessions and more frequently, and I totally understand that, you know, volunteers have got other things to do in their lives, so we're looking to sort of develop bigger teams. In the last couple of weeks we've brought on a number of new volunteers, including older teenagers who feel a little bit awkward perhaps. They would want to get involved with this session, but they don't think it's for them, although having said that, we've got 14-16-year-olds in there as well, playing quite happily. But it moves them to that next thing of being able to sort of organize things, and it gives them sort of work experience, and we're very hands off with them as well.
It's something we were talking about by email, wasn't it? That you're looking for volunteers, and I was really struck by this, actually looking for those older teenagers who have neurodiversity, who understand it. My kids, I've got 3 kids, so just for those of you who are watching, Rich and I have literally just met, basically, well, on here. So I have 2 older autistic young people. They are 21 and 19, but the opportunities that they may have had to work with younger children who have ASD or ADHD have been incredibly empowering, actually, because they see, well, first of all, they see a reflection of themselves when they were younger, but they instinctively know when they need to intervene, but mostly that, as you say, these kids on the whole are very happy being left alone to play safely. And why on earth should I look you in the eyes and have a conversation with you if I can just play with my trains, for goodness sake?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. One of my volunteers in that picture, he's great. He doesn't come for the full session. He decides that he's sort of had enough, which is fine. But then when he is there, as well as helping out to set the thing up at the beginning, he'll sort of somehow find his way and just be gently chatting at or with the other kids, and they can choose whether they want to listen or not. He's not fussed, but he's actually got a really good knowledge of the whole sort of Thomas the Tank Engine thing. So he's sort of bringing a little bit of a sort of storyline to it, or telling the stuff. He's having a great time as well. There was a similar action. I'm involved also with the Transport Sparks Facebook group, which was set up by Anushka Yo about 3-4 years ago, which is much more a sort of information sharing group for sort of broader transport enthusiasts. And I was just chatting with her earlier on today, and they went on out on a sort of a trip on the underground with some of the kids who are in their teens, and one of the sort of early 20-year-olds was a bit awkward about coming and was thinking, oh, I'm just going to be you know, it's not going to be my sort of age group. But with a bit of encouragement, he came along, and then he was then the fount of knowledge, or even larger fount of knowledge, which the younger kids completely appreciated. He wasn't just, you know, telling them for the sake of it. He was completely relating to it, and actually also becoming a sort of steward as well of them, going around as they were, just keeping an eye on people, almost without being asked. It just shows that people have got the abilities. You just need to
give them the opportunity.
Give them that opportunity. So it's yeah, we've had, so we have volunteers of all ages. We have kids playing. We've got 18-year-olds playing who, that's all they want to do. They want to come and they just do their thing. Absolutely fine. But why not sort of give the opportunities there as well? So yeah, if anybody's interested, we're currently running in, as far as Surrey is concerned, we're running in Woking, in the Wizzy New Scout Hall near the Leisure Centre, on Saturday afternoons every fortnight. I'm based in Epsom. We run also in southwest London as well, up in Brentford, where the video is from, in Barnes and in Sutton as well. So if any of those sort of are reachable, I'd be more than happy to chat to people and then just come along and see what we're up to and see if it works.
Lovely. That sounds absolutely amazing. I wanted to ask you, as I say, I have 2 young people with autism, but that doesn't make me by any imagination an expert. I'm an expert on them, I suppose, is the closest. I was wondering, you mentioned that you have the full spectrum. Do you have young people who are non-verbal who come as well?
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. And my question is, we know, don't we, that there's often a comorbidity, I hate that word, but people who have ASD and ADHD together, but not all the time. And there's something that can be really contradictory about the needs of those 2 young people. How do you I'm imagining that you might have a very energetic ADHD chap who is getting in the way of an autistic young person's order. How do you find that manages itself?
As someone with both those conditions, it helps me run the business to a degree, although they actually argue with each other half the time as well. I'm always intrigued, because we're sort of very hands off with the sessions. It gives us just a chance to sort of stand back and watch, and you see the huge variety. And we often have sort of conversations with parents about, you know, not just the fact that, I mean, we advertise it as autistic ADHD. We get all sorts. And it's interesting having the conversations. We get an awful lot of dyspraxia in there. So we get people tripping over stuff, kicking stuff, not being able to put the train on the tracks. You know, that we just go, yeah, whatever. And we get the ones who are very sort of focused and sort of stay in one place, particularly the littler ones. We get those who are just buzzing around, and yet they are astonishingly careful. We've had guys that spent the whole session sort of running around, and yet they never touch the track once.
Wow.
So it is not that they're charging around in an uncontrolled way. They're completely aware of their environment. It is just that their way of interacting, engaging with it is in a very active way, but they completely see where they're at, and they work around people, and they don't work through people.
You know, there's one of the things that, as you're speaking, the little sparks in my head are taking me back to the work that we do as the Parent Care Forum. So we work in a project-based way, and we have our team of coordinators who speak to parents and gather their stories, and then those stories feed into the various projects that the participation managers do, and their work is mostly with local authority partners or third sector. And inclusion is a hugely important topic, and it feels like we're desperately trying to wrangle how do we make a school inclusive, and yet what you're describing is sometimes we just need to give children breathing space. And you know, that flexibility of, if you need to buzz around, doesn't mean you're going to be wrecking everything in sight.
No, and I get excuse the doorbell earlier. That was that's what post lockdown delivery. Yes, there is a huge amount of that. I think it is a case of, I mean, I'm intrigued whenever I run a session to see which people I get. And so you see the different combinations of traits and interests and what they're doing. And in an ideal world, it's that thing of anybody running an event like this needs as broad a knowledge as possible of these, and to be able to then go, oh, okay, that person is, you know, is okay with A and B, but they're struggling with C and D, but actually that person is A and C and a bit of F and all the rest of it. And then not then being prescriptive about it, not then saying, right, well, we need that person needs things, therefore we need a sensory room, or this person, you know, with this person as I think there is, there's at least one in there with noise cancelling headphones on, which again, we get lovely mixtures of that. First time they come, they may well be wearing them. Subsequent sessions they won't, because they now realize what the thing is about and what to expect. And I know other mums have told me that, one mum told me that I said, oh, he's not got his independence on. He said, no, he told me this morning. He said, no, I'm not going to, I don't want them on today. They go, fine. So there's no one size fits all with it, and literally every session, everything is different. So it's that in an ideal world, it's knowing what all the possibilities are, being prepared to expect individuals arriving with any combination to any extent of that, and then just trying to anticipate or accommodate as much as possible, bearing in mind we've got people who are on the undersensory side of things and have got no volume control, very loud, vocalizing, all the rest of it, which will spook the ones who are very sensitive to sound. Except it having happened for 20 minutes, everybody just sort of goes, okay, they get used to it and go, okay, that's now something I know and understand is going on in all the board club today. So we're not a one size fits all at all. We're sort of the opposite.
It just shows you, doesn't it, if you offer a space that is accepting, our children who are seen as rigid and black and white thinkers actually do absolutely have the capacity to adapt.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and they empathise like mad as well. This is what I've got another video from another session which I got set up by accident, and I only looked at it afterwards, and there was 3 kids with huge long trains who of course didn't want to take their trains off the track, all coming to the one junction, and you just thought, yeah, exactly. Except what they have is the 3 of them realising they're going to bump into each other and all sorting it out, not necessarily with a huge amount of conversation. And you mentioned about having non-verbal children there. Yes, we do. I remember distinctly, I had one event where I had a lovely mixture of one guy who is sort of selective nonverbal, doesn't talk a lot except, you know, to family and at home. And then one guy who is talk all the time, quite high volume. And yet weirdly, for the majority of the session, these 2 guys were playing next to each other for the whole session around different places. Every time I would turn around, they're over there now. And so that they teamed up. There was no expectations between them to communicate in the same way, but they both had similar interests, and actually they worked out that this was cool. It may well have disappeared, that relationship, as soon as the thing ended, and then, you know, even if they come to another session together, they may not, you know, it may not happen again, but for that session they were just teaming up, and there you go.
And it's really interesting to me, because all of these things leave me thinking that we in the neurotypical world have a very restricted view of what communication is and can be. And what you're describing is beautiful communication, even if it doesn't involve words. There is that interaction between 2 individuals or more. And I'd say the 3 who are joining them, I've seen it with, you know, my kids and groups of autistic young people. And you say, if you don't force them to communicate the way you think they should, actually it does happen.
Yeah, there's lovely occasions when, as families arrive, whether they're the first time they've come and they're a bit, or even they're regulars, and I still get a few families that are sort of reasonably insistent that little Charlie or whoever says hello to me, and yet little Charlie just wants to get his coat off, even if he can be bothered to do that, and get in there. And I'm literally, I get a flick of eye contact as if to go, oh, you know, the All Aboard Club man's here, and I go, all right. And then I keep talking to the parents, and I have to sort of say, you know, don't worry, let him go. You know, if there is a need for him to, you know, say something, or communicate with me by bringing a train that's not working or whatever, then they will. It's the whole thing of, you know, autistic people tend to communicate when something needs to be done. So yeah, there is that sort of expectation of it, and then everybody, bringing their kids to me to say thank you at the end. It's lovely, but completely not needed. I know that the kids will just disappear off because they're tired, they're overexcited, hungry, whatever, and they've decided they're going, or they've realised that it's finishing and they want to go. The last thing I want to do is being held in held to say thank you very much to the nice man. So it comes from a personal thing. I know that's the case, so I know that if I want to catch up with parents or whatever, I tend to do it afterwards and not there if they start asking me questions and the kid wants to go. You just sort of got to go with the flow.
I was having a look at your website, and we were talking very briefly about the kind of organization that you are, and you said you were kind of heading towards the charitable kind of status, but I noticed you have, I suppose, endorsements from the National Autistic Society and Contact and a number of places. It sounded really interesting. And I wondered, so one of the things that we are always really aware of when I do these kind of conversations and videos is I feel that I have to make sure that anything that we as the forum promote is accessible and how it goes. I assume there must be a cost for families to come to you at the moment. And I just wondered kind of how you work through that, and if there's a possibility that you might at some point look at working with the short breaks people in Surrey. Has that kind of, over to you, basically. I don't have a clear question, but those are the kind of things I was talking about.
I mean, we literally started in the youth club around the corner where I used to live in Streatham, and sort of asking for donations to cover the venue hire. It was a very voluntary sort of see how we go. It's now a business, albeit a charitable business, and every location we operate is slightly different, and we do get some funding to help with certain locations. We get commissioned by NAS branches, Skylarks in Twickenham, and other support groups to run events as part of their program, which of course is then the price of which is then up to that provider, or free or whatever. When we run our own sessions, we charge for the children, but not the grown-ups. But the price of those varies. We charge somewhere in the region of about £12 for when we've got somewhere which is unsubsidized at the moment. But we also do deals with local groups so that they can, if they're interested in subsidizing families to come to our public sessions, we can find ways of doing that as well. We've had parents who have persuaded their local short breaks offer to actually include 10 sessions with All Aboard Club. So they've got the funding to cover that, and then we've sorted a way so that they can book their 10 sessions as and when they're available. We work every possible way around because we know what it's like, and there's no sort of straight answer on it. We also run in the school holidays. We've been down to the Bluebell Railway in Sussex 2-3 times and run autism friendly events for them. This half term we've got a nearly sellout event up at the Little Steam Railway in Oxfordshire to Chinner and Princess Risborough, where we're going and just basically taking over our own space, our own carriage, and a couple of little behind the scenes type things. So we sort of extended it into sort of out and about type things, which helps as much with the sort of independence and travel, as much as our own public sessions, like the one there in Brentford, where people have to get somewhere different. So there's a sort of subsidiary things of getting out and about, and if you like, it's reducing that sort of social isolation and that worry of, this sounds great, my son daughter sounds really excited with it, but I don't know whether it'll work. The only significant challenges we've had with people coming to our events are initial sort of anxiety of when they've arrived. And in most of our venues, what we can actually then do is set up a little mini version outside of the space. At the museum in Brentford, it's a bit tricky because it's one huge open space. But where we're in a community hall, we just set up something little in the entrance area, and within 10 minutes, they've disappeared from there, and you think, oh, maybe they've gone home and they didn't work. No, actually, no, they're in the main hall with everybody else. We get overexcitement, and we get the sort of real sort of difficulties with sharing and having to share tracks and share trains and things, but then that's sort of what we're about. We're not expecting beautiful skills in that, even for any children of those age. So yeah, we get some on their first time, maybe last sort of 20-30 minutes, and they decide that's enough.
Yeah,
absolutely fine. We know in most cases they'll be back and they'll be there for the 1.5 hours, 2 hours the next time, because they've now got a sort of mental map of the event, the experience, the sensory situation.
Can I ask you, when I have this kind of conversation, I tend to time travel a little bit to when my children were younger. And one of the things I always used to find really difficult was some of these play schemes were just for my autistic child or something. Do you ever, or can you take siblings who might be neurotypical, not have any issues?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's interesting the number of times we get asked if, oh, I really want to come, but I don't know what to do with brother, sister, whatever. And I say, bring them along. Yeah. It might not be sibling friends' favorite activity, which can be a bit awkward for them. But if there is sort of some sort of interest, then go for it.
Who doesn't like trains?
I know, it's strange. What are these people? I have seen some lovely situations where even where there has been a friend who's got a similar interest, you get that lovely reverse situation where you have a room full of madly excited, very focused autistic ADHD kids and one neurotypical friend standing on the edge, not quite being able to get their head around it, because they might know their school friend is a little bit different, but now they have it sort of magnified, both in terms of scale. Everyone's got their defenses down, so they're not masking anything, they're just being themselves, and they're that thing of, okay, right. And so it does, I do sort of gently tell parents that if they're bringing sort of siblings along, just to sort of let them know what they're coming to.
Do you know, isn't it a wonderful experience though for a neurotypical kid to find themselves being the outsider?
Yeah. I felt slightly smug, particularly there was one particular one where the guy was looking very lost, and I just went, yeah, sort of, now you know what it's like the other way around. I wasn't being quite as bitter and twisted as that, but and I think it as I mentioned before, the kids get something out of it, if only not just the trains, obviously, but the fact that they're being around other people who are similar to them.
Yeah.
And they probably won't have been in a space where there's been that many other people like them. They have older teenage, young adults and old adults like me who are in a sort of mentoring capacity, no more than that, who sort of click, and we can try and keep up with their level of knowledge, interest and particular detail as best we can. And it just sort of, it gives them, it hopefully sort of gives them a little bit of broader awareness of what they are, if you want, and just to sort of, again, and with the parents as well, for them to realize that yes, my child has been given this this diagnosis of autism. I'm now supposedly in a room with a bunch of kids all with the same diagnosis, but just look at them all.
Yeah.
And so I've had a number of parents come to me saying, the child really enjoyed it. Also, it's given me actually a lot of, and that then allowed them just to go away and sort of see things in a slightly different light, or be able to have that sort of have the courage or the awareness to sort of push their case, I suppose. So rather than being told by a school or somewhere that this is the support that an autistic child should get, they're now in a position to go, oh, okay, I now know why you recommended that.
Yeah.
But my child is X, Y, Z, and you're saying ABC. They're all autism, I'm afraid, and ABC will actually mess up my X, Y, Z child if you're not careful.
Exactly. Yes. It's one of the big pieces of work that we've done at Family Voice in the last year with Surrey County Council is they've just published an all-age autism strategy, which they did just ahead of the national autism strategy coming out. And it was a really interesting piece of work because it started with a group of very well-meaning professionals saying, this is what we think it should look like. And luckily at that point, they involved a group of parent carers, including from the National Autistic Society branch in Surrey, and a whole group of autistic adults. And it became a really co-productive process, which completely changed the direction that strategy was heading in. So we've just, the strategy is published. What will come of it in the implementation, it's a 5-year strategy. But when I look at this and when I hear you talk, it feels like this kind of example and demonstration is really important, because what you're showing and what you're talking about is a community. And so many of our children are brought up in a community that isn't theirs. Whereas actually, if they get to be around autistic adults, that makes sense, doesn't it? You kind of know what you can grow up.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful that it doesn't become a sort of, oh, I'm not in that community, I'm in this community, and therefore this is my community in terms of where I need to look for help, support, activities and things. We're not that different, but so and there is that sort of join across. I suppose it allows us to sort of look at the outside world, the neurotypical world, in a sort of with a degree of sort of us being a bigger group, I suppose, and everybody else going, okay, yeah, now we see where we are, but also being able to go, actually, there isn't a bigger
That's
step.
Right.
And there are opportunities. I mean, I get parents sort of half joking saying that their 8-year-old child is still is really into Thomas the Tank Engine and whatever, or their 14-year-old is still, and we have no worries about age appropriateness, no such thing in All Aboard Club. And they're saying, oh, well, I have no idea what my child's going to grow up as, and what they're going to do. And yet you can turn that around, and within people I know within the Transport Sparks group, there are teenagers, young adults who show that they've gone on to become schedulers for bus companies, working for Network Rail. They're not necessarily going to be the train driver that the little kid dreams of, but then a lot of little kids dream of those jobs because that's the ones they see.
That's
but
right.
You've got an opportunity for somewhere who's got the inherent knowledge and interest in something, so they've actually got a brain full of the information, which would actually be a nightmare for a company, a transport company, to actually train them with. They're going to walk up and go, no, it's all right, I actually know how heavy that is, so therefore what the requirements are, or I know you saying a class whatever, I know exactly what one is and where it operates. You don't need to tell me. Or I know exactly where that location is because I can give you the bus routes from across 2 places in London off the top of my head. And all of a sudden it then becomes a strength.
Absolutely.
And an ability in a job, as long as you then say, okay, that we've got those benefits, we now then need to think, okay, how is this person going to manage that work environment, which is the bit that can get tricky in larger organizations, because they have a sort of way of doing things, whether it's their meetings or communications or whatever. So yeah, there's a sort of longer term thing to this, in that there is that sort of using the sort of keeping it going, not making out that it is to have this special interest obsession, as it gets referred to as on the NAS website, annoyingly. There is a strength to them. It not only just as a sort of social mental health type thing that the kids go back to and refer back and develop their knowledge of and all the rest of it, but there is then scope to use it to some degree.
Absolutely.
And so that perhaps that's the next step for when these guys in the video, when 6 years down, another 6 years down the line, we want to be seeing them going into running the trains for us. They'll be very good at it.
I think so, yes. It's been absolutely fascinating, Richard. In terms of the volunteer scheme, are you still looking for volunteers? And if so, should people go through your website?
Yes, we're always on the lookout, because volunteers come and go. They have other things to do and things. So it's much better for us to have a big team, and we can then sort of select, and people don't feel pushed at it. We are All Aboard Club everywhere on the web and on social media. And then contact me, Richard. My email address is richard@allaboardclub.com. Just contact me whatever way comes easiest, whether it's through social media, website, whatever, or the contact form on the website, and give me an idea of sort of where and what, and we'll see what we do from there.
Lovely. What I'll do is, when I get I will get my wonderful young man to edit this video so that we can put it on our YouTube channel and share it with you, of course, and I'll get him to put the website and email address on there somewhere.
That'd be great.
The other thing I just thought of, again, it's a kind of parent question. Do you do things like birthday parties?
Yes, we go anywhere and do anything. We've done a mixture. We've gone to people's homes if they've got the space. We've also done. We've got the option with a number of our venues where we can basically extend the session either before or afterwards and make it just for family and friends, or we could take it to a completely separate venue if there's something close to them.
Great.
And also more than happy to work with support groups, however formal or informal. If there is a group of people that would or an organization that would like this part of their program, then we can do that, and we can sort the funding out separately. But we do as much of our stuff is with other organizations as it is on our own.
Right. So I was just before we started recording, I was saying to Richard that we, together with a charity I've mentioned before, Surrey Youth Focus and East Surrey YMCA, we've started a third sector SEND network in Surrey that I will be sending you an invitation to, Richard, which will hopefully get you linked to all of these fantastic third sector organisations in Surrey. And I think it will be really interesting to see kind of how that goes, and whether it's worth having conversations with the Short Breaks team. You never know. And basically, a lot of what I do is try and make connections between people. I feel like a spider sometimes.
Yes, it's true. I mean, we to a degree we find the same thing in that the organisations that we've worked with, whether venues or support groups, it's always been a little bit of a surprise to them, sort of both what we do and how we do it. And it's just that little sort of extra step for them to be able to realise, the benefits of activities like these, and knowing it's provided, everything is provided for them. And it's not a big step as people think to actually operate it. And if anybody's got any friendly venues that we can, we'd be interested to hear of those as well. We literally done it anywhere. We've done it around big exhibits in the Science Museum. In that video, we're underneath the huge pumping engines. We've been in community halls. We've done anywhere. So yeah, we're more than happy to. The trains will go anywhere.
Great. And I think I will probably finish off by saying, if you or your children have been to All Aboard Club, send us a little email at Family Voice. I'm sure at Richard as well. All of us in the third sector rely really on the impact that we make to be able to continue. The more we have, feedback and evidence that it works and that it makes a positive impact, then things like funding are much easier to get, and we can get bigger, can't we?
Yep. It all helps, if only just to know what worked and what didn't work. We get some children who love some of our venues but found other ones really difficult, and just knowing that is great for us to work ahead and think where and how we operate.
Brilliant. I think I will say goodbye for now. I'm going to stop streaming, and thank you ever so much.
Love to be here.